Hi, I'm Kimberly Anne. I am an expat living in Portugal. I've been here since 2022, and I'm going to answer some questions. First, as an expat living in Portugal, it's amazing. It's amazing. Oftentimes I get asked if the Portuguese respond negatively to expats coming into Portugal. And while I know that that can happen and does happen, I've never experienced it. So I have never experienced anything but genuine kindness and interest from the Portuguese here. I had one guy tell me that when I asked him, because I ask people all the time, are you upset that so many people are moving here and changing the culture, or are you fearful that we're going to change the culture, or what, how are you feeling? And this one gentleman said, I am happy because Porto was not nearly as safe as it is now. He said 10, 20 years ago, there were areas you couldn't walk at night. And now, because of expats, it is a much safer environment. So that's one thing. I also feel really welcome, not just by the Portuguese, but by the expat community here. It's a big community, but a lot of people know each other, and people try to help each other, and it's great. I really love it. I also, if I have questions or concerns, because it can be overwhelming, especially I moved here by myself, I live by myself, and I didn't know anything. I barely knew the language, and people have just been really helpful, and people have just been really helpful. Yes, I think Portugal is a great place to retire. I personally have not retired because I did retire when I first moved here, or was retired, and then some things happened in the US and with some investments or whatever, and I had to start working. But I have a lot of friends who have retired here, expats, and they love it. And a lot of them are volunteering, and some of them are still working because they love to work or they want to work, but most of them are just, they're having the time of their lives. They're exploring. I have a really good friend down in the Algarve, and she's paddle boarding. She's she's almost 70 now, so she's going paddle boarding. She's just going hiking. I go hiking. Yeah, there's a lot to do for a retiree. It's your life is huge. It doesn't end because you've retired or because you've moved here, obviously. It's just beginning. And the other thing that people love to do is play pickleball. And I have not tried that yet, but that is really big among expats and retirees. So let's talk budget. A reasonable range to expect to live comfortably in Portugal was $2,000 a month when I first moved here, and now that is challenging. I will be honest. So apartments are more expensive, and prices specifically housing prices have increased. So I'm really lucky. I have a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, and it's only a 25-minute walk to downtown, and I pay under $1,000, 1,000 euros a month. But my friend just moved out of her apartment. It was a 2-bedroom, but it was very small. It was about the size of my front room and kitchen. Obviously, you can't see my front room and kitchen, but my front room is pretty big for an entryway. It's the dog's room now, but it's not huge. And her entire apartment, 2-bedroom apartment with a kitchen and a bathroom, was that size. I would say about 400 square feet. I would say, yeah, maybe 450. Very, very small. She was renting it for $500 a month, which is great. And there's only one wall that has windows. There's hardly any light available in the apartment. The bedrooms don't have any windows. It was very small. It was very cramped. You couldn't even fit a couch. The roof leaked into the kitchen, so when it rained, and there were more issues I won't go into, but they are renting it now for 800 euros a month. So that just gives you an idea of the change in housing prices. Now, she is closer to downtown. She's about 10-minute walk from me, so she's about 10-15-minute walk to downtown, really a 10-minute walk to downtown. So she was closer in Porto, but still, it's definitely, yeah, it's definitely gotten more expensive to live here. However, the food remains, and the food costs have risen too, but they still remain very affordable. I like to talk about my doggy daycare a lot because it's super, super affordable. It's only 190 euros a month for a full month, 5 days a week of doggy daycare, whereas I was paying, I think, 65 a day for my other dog back in the US. So there are certain things that are less. There are certain things that are rising. Doctor visits are very inexpensive. Dentists are about the same, which I found interesting. Teeth cleaning it's less, but it's a little less. But I still live for less than half of what I was spending in the US. So when I was working full-time in the US, and I did have a pretty big overhead because I had my own community clinic, acupuncture clinic, and I had a storefront, and I had 5 employees and so on and so forth, and I was spending $10,000 a month. And I was spending $10,000 a month even after I got rid of the storefront and I had just my own private practice where I was renting several rooms in someone else's facility, and I was still spending $10,000 a month. And as I mentioned here, and I did during COVID get it down to 5,000, but I couldn't leave the house. I could just go hiking. I couldn't go out or do things. I couldn't join a gym. There were a bunch of things I couldn't do. Oh, that's another thing that's super inexpensive here is a gym. A gym is super, super affordable here. And we have them in the US too, affordable gyms like Planet Fitness or whatever. But things just cost less here for the most part. As I mentioned, when I first got here, I spent $2,000 a month. That was my budget, and I could do that. Half of that went to my rent, which I don't recommend, but I could have found a less expensive rental at that time. Now it's about $3,500 a month. That's my budget, and I spend it. So there's no savings with that. So that's just me, and that's just to let you know a little bit about what to expect and what to budget for. And of course, there are people living for less or living on less. There are people living on more. That happens everywhere, but it happens here too. I happen to have a car. I don't drive it a lot, but I have a car. I don't pay for parking, but that is an expense. So it depends on your lifestyle, right? And I try to be as frugal as possible. It's really hard for me to talk about the best towns and regions to live in Portugal because, and I will, but I've only lived in Porto. So I've lived in Porto for 3 years. And the best town or region is going to depend on what you're looking for. So if you're looking for heat and you just want it to be hot all the time, you're going to want to be in the Algarve. If you are looking for cooler weather and you really, really like it to be cold, you're going to be looking in the north. I can tell you my favorite places. Again, they may not be yours, but they're mine. I love Lisbon, but I don't want to live there. For me, Lisbon is too expensive. It is too crowded. The traffic is horrific. And it's really warm in the summer. It's pretty warm in the summer, although the weather there is more or less good. But there's a town south of Lisbon that I love. It's one of my favorite towns. It's called Setúbal. That's how it's pronounced. If you spell it out, it would be spelled out Setúbal. But I really, really, really like that town. I've considered moving there. It just got something. I can't, I'm that kind of person that when I go somewhere, and even to a town, I know the instant I drive in or step off the train or step out of my car that this is a place for me. And that's how I felt with Setúbal. So I really, really love it there. There's a lot of really cute areas around Lisbon. I'm going to butcher it, but Ericeira is another town that I really like. It's a beach town. I prefer it to some of the other beach towns that other people have had to talk about, but there are a lot of little towns around Ericeira that I really liked as well. I also have not been to, but I've heard a lot of people loving the region called Alentejo, and it's super popular. There's a lot of expats moving there. It's the area between Lisbon and the Algarve, and it's warm, and it's a lot of little towns dotting the area. You can either be on the coast or you can be inland, and just a lot of people are loving that area. I talked to several people who live there, and I really love Coimbra, and that's about an hour. I say it's about an hour south of Porto, but my friend who's moving there today says it's an hour and a half, but I still think it's about an hour with no traffic. And it's really cute. It's the college town. It's small. It's very hilly. So that's another thing. If you don't like hills, Lisbon might not be the place for you, right? So you have to look at things like that and how close you want to be to an airport. That's also a very important factor. But I really love Coimbra. I really love in the north. A lot of people love Braga, and it's beautiful. It is beautiful. Had I gone to Braga first, I probably would have ended up living there. But I really like Guimarães, which is like Braga's here. You're not going to be able to tell if you don't see a map, but it's about 40 minutes from, they're both about 40 minutes from Porto, but they're in a little bit different direction. And Guimarães is, I think, a little bit more north, but also closest to Braga. And I love it. It's the birthplace of Portugal. That's what they say. That's what they consider it as. And it's just beautiful and thriving, and I really love Vila do Conde. It's on the ocean, and also there's a river running through it. It's about an hour north of Porto, and it is the last place that you can take the metro to going north. It's a beautiful town. However, it's quite expensive now. And for me, it's not affordable. Maybe it is for you. It's really, really cute. It does get quite a bit colder in the winter. So that's something to consider. And then the north is, my favorite is Viana do Castelo. And that's also a little town right on the ocean, and it's close to the Spanish border. It's adorable. It's just, I love it up there. The whole region up there is really, really special. Beautiful green, obviously, because it rains all the time and it's cold, but it is stunning. And I did talk to a friend who their brother or sister just moved up there just south of Spain, and they got a huge house. It's rural. They're out in the middle of nowhere, but it was very, very, very affordable. I can't remember. It was under 200,000 for a large house up there. So that is a really nice area. There's a lot to do in the north. And of course you can go to Spain a lot, all the time. Vigo is right over the border, and it's gorgeous. All of Galicia, that's where Galicia is, and that's northern Spain and right above Portugal, and it's its own little thing. It's not Spain has a bunch of different regions, and so the Galicians consider themselves Galician before they consider themselves Spanish. So it's really interesting. And I know because my partner is Galician, so and that's where they live. So anyway, it's beautiful, beautiful, beautiful area. And then the other place that I wanted to mention is just around Porto. There are a lot of little bedroom communities, and I always like to say that a bedroom community here is not the same as it is in the US, where you have tract housing and you have to drive to a store. A bedroom community here means that there's a coffee shop on the corner, there's a market usually within walking distance, and there are buses and trains that go there, and for some of the bedroom communities around Porto, the metro will go there. And so it really is like its own little village. They call them villages. So I love the whole area around Porto. I also love the area between Porto and, it's not quite to Lisbon, but there's an area called Aveiro, and it's one of my favorites. It's also on the coast. It is gorgeous. And there's a lot of little pockets, little villages around there. There's Ovar, which I love. The beach near Ovar, Furadouro, is gorgeous and one of my favorite beaches. And so there's a lot of little pockets in Aveiro. And Ovar is a separate community, but I think the bigger part of it is all Aveiro. And yeah, love it, love it, love it, love it. I have a friend who just moved down there, and she is ecstatic and trying to get me to move there too, and maybe I will. There are several different visas that are available in Portugal. The first is a temporary residency visa. It's good for 2 years, and then you follow that up with a permanent residency visa, which is good for 3 years. Most people go for the D7 visa, which is the passive income visa. Another popular one is the D8 digital nomad visa. However, the requirements for the D7 are much easier. There are lower requirements, and you're allowed to work on the D7, even in Portugal, but most people work remotely while living in Portugal, but you can even work for a Portuguese company on the D7. Now, in order to qualify for the D7, you have to have $1,000 a month of passive income, and you will have to prove that. You will have to show bank statements for 6 months in order to get that. And then once you're here in Portugal to get your visa approval for your appointment, you have to have $10,000 to $12,000 in a bank account here in Portugal. And you have to double check on this because things do change. And it's a little bit of a process in order to get it. You have to first, if you're in the United States, I don't know how to get it if you're elsewhere, but in the United States there's 2 offices, and they are called VFS. Those are the offices, and there's one in San Francisco and one in Washington, D.C. And depending on where you live in the country depends on which office you go to. So if you're on the East Coast, you have to go to the Washington, D.C. office, and on the West Coast, the San Francisco office. And they will tell you which office you go to when you go on the website. So you do want to go on the VFS website. You'll want to go through and make sure that you have everything in order. They have a list of all the things you need. You'll have to go ahead and make an appointment at the consulate and the VFS. And then you will go in for your interview. And the interview is just a formality. It's not difficult. They don't ask a lot of questions, but you will have to have all your ducks in a row. So there are a bunch of things that you'll have to have. And again, you can print out the entire list on their website. Yes, English is widely spoken in Portugal. Although I should say it depends on where you are. In Lisbon, absolutely. In Porto, more so than even when I moved here. More people speak English. Not everybody does. That 100%, not everybody does. But depending on where you are, in a big city, obviously, there will be more people that speak English. Here in my apartment complex, for example, I have several neighbors that do not speak any English, the older neighbors, and they're happy to get by with what little Portuguese you do know, or some pantomiming or whatever. But it's more that people will make an effort to communicate with you. And you do have a translator app and all that. But I would say I used to say that about 85% of the people that live in the Algarve, the Portuguese that live in the Algarve, will speak English, and about 50% in Lisbon, and about 30% in Porto. Those numbers are changing. More and more people obviously are moving here, and more Portuguese are trying to learn English, or a lot of people know English but they're afraid to use it. And then you'll ask them if they know English, and they'll say, oh, just a tiny little bit, or barely, or I speak poorly. And then you'll start talking to them and they speak perfectly. So there's a lot of that. So there's a lot of, maybe they don't feel confident in speaking it, but they will make an effort. And then, well, I was going to say, if you go into a small Portuguese-owned store, it depends. If it's a tourist store or in a touristic area, yes, they're going to speak English. At the butcher's down the street, probably not. The healthcare system in Portugal is amazing. They offer universal healthcare here, which means if you sign up to the public healthcare system as soon as you arrive, and you do have to have your residency card to do that, your temporary residency card. And once you're on the public healthcare system, or in the public healthcare system, you can go to any of the public hospitals and be treated, often for free or for a very low price. Now, people are paying into this universal healthcare system by taxes, and you too will be paying into it through taxes, but it is amazing. It is absolutely amazing. There are longer wait times. Depending, I did have to go to an emergency room here in Porto, and I had a significant wait time. I ended up having to get surgery, and I ended up going through the private healthcare system. So you can also get private healthcare. I was able to sign up for private healthcare as soon as I arrived. So I had that. But when I first broke my fingers, I broke 2 fingers on this hand. They have never healed properly, and they never will. But I went to the public healthcare, the public hospital, and I had to wait many hours, and they didn't have a lot of empathy. They had left their empathy at the door or whatever, because they're so overrun and so busy, and so many people needed help all the time. So they didn't have any empathy or patience for me when I got there. And it was, the treatment I received was okay, but the way that they treated me, it was not okay. I did not like it. And I ended up the same day, because they didn't really help me, and they weren't just broken, it was bad. It required 2 surgeries. But I ended up going to a private emergency room, and they were amazing. They were just wonderful, wonderful. I just had to pay my copay, which was $18 or 18 euros at the time. And they were super helpful, and they bandaged, and they took all the x-rays, all the tests, everything. I don't think I had to pay for those. If I did, it was a nominal fee. And they were just much more empathetic and caring, and it was great experience. I ended up having my surgeries at this private healthcare facility, hospital really, and I paid 200 euros for the surgery, and I had a private room that was better than many hotel rooms I've stayed in, with a private bathroom and all the meals and all the medicine and everything. And it was a really, really, really great experience. And the doctor was phenomenal. The surgeon, he was really great. So the other thing about the healthcare, which I talk about a lot, is they gave me a bunch of tests here right when I first got here that I had never had in the United States, or tests that I had begged to have in the United States. And I wasn't given them. So in the US, they refused. So like a DEXA scan, which I really needed, and it turned out I have severe osteoporosis, and they wouldn't give me one in the US. An MRI, they refused in the US to give me one. And here it's routine. Not the MRI, that's not routine, but you can just ask for one and you get it. Super affordable. Everything is, the healthcare is really good. I've also heard that the healthcare is better, or the doctors are better in the north, especially near Porto. I don't know if that's true. That's just what I've heard. And my experience has only been in Porto. So I love my doctors and I love the healthcare that I receive here. And every year they give me just a battery of tests, and all the blood tests and everything's covered. So I'm thrilled. It's one of the main reasons that I am hoping to stay here in Portugal. And yes, expats can access public health care, but like I said, you have to have your card, your temporary residency card, and then you just go and sign up. Super easy. You get a number called an utente number, and just make sure you always give that to your doctors, you give that to the pharmacist, and everything will be under that number, and that's how you get all your discounts. And then also, I will say that in the pharmacy, the discounts are high when you have your public health care number. And so, for example, I have to take a specific drug for medication for my osteoporosis. And when the medicine is not under my insurance, it was about 270 euros, I want to say. It was pretty high. Maybe even, it was close to $300. And then with my public health care, the medicine costs under 60 euros. So it's a big difference. I have a couple other medications that I take, and the price when you use your utente number is significantly lower. So super worth it, and pretty easy to sign up for. You just have to go. You don't need an appointment. You wait in line, and you give them everything that they need, all the paperwork. Everything's paperwork here. A lot of paperwork. Portugal is extremely safe for retirees, solo expats, everybody, pretty much everybody. And when I first moved here in 2022, it was the third safest country in the world. Iceland was number one. And now I don't know how it rates, but it's still extremely safe. I don't think I need to say that it's safer than the United States, but I have a couple examples. So one is that whenever I used to leave my house, and I lived in a really nice neighborhood, kind of out in the middle of nowhere near San Francisco. If anybody's heard of it, it's called Fairfax, and it's a pretty safe neighborhood, but I still had problems because I'm a solo person, and solo female, obviously. And I had to, when I went out, I had to carry didn't have to, but I chose to carry pepper spray in one hand and a stun gun in the other, because I had that many issues in Fairfax and San Rafael, which is sad in retrospect, but I thought it was normal. And when I traveled throughout the United States, I did the same thing, and I was always pretty worried about my safety. So when I first moved here to Portugal, I carried my stun gun, which was pretty silly, and thankfully never had to use it. And then when a car would pull up next to me, I would leap out of the way and be afraid. And it took me a little over a year for my fear to subside. There are things that I do here that I would never do in the United States. For example, in the United States, as soon as I got in my car, I would lock all my doors, and always did that. And here, I don't have to. So the other cool thing is that I have Portuguese friends that will leave their phone on the table at a cafe and go to the bathroom without anybody watching their phone and come back and the phone's still there. I wouldn't recommend it. I don't do that. I've had my purse stolen in San Francisco when I left it on a chair and turned around and turned back and it was gone. And I think it's just part of who I am now that I don't have that much trust. But I've certainly left my phone on a table and turned around to talk to somebody here in Portugal, which I would never, ever do in the United States. So for that, it's really safe. For there's not a lot of petty theft. It exists. I won't say it doesn't. And I won't say that people don't get mugged or people don't get hurt on occasion, but it's much, much less. So I feel safer here than I've ever felt anywhere in the world, and I've traveled quite a bit. I already talked about the specific visa programs for specifically also for retirees and digital nomads. Digital nomad is called the D8, and don't hold me to this, but I'm pretty sure that you need to show a passive income of around $3,500 to $3,800 a month. I'm not 100% positive, and I don't know all the logistics of the D8 digital nomad visa. You could also come over on family reunification if you have a spouse that has EU citizenship, and then your spouse and you come over together. And then you can apply for family reunification. So that is also an option if you have that opportunity. Yes, foreigners can buy property in Portugal. As a matter of fact, many do. I have many friends that have bought, quite a few friends actually, that have bought property here. It's no problem. Sometimes it will be a little bit harder to get a bank loan. Somehow they've managed it because the friends that I have, actually the ones that I know of, I maybe paid outright. So I'm not sure, but I have talked to a real estate agent about buying property myself. I have not done it. It's not in my budget at the moment, but I did talk to a real estate agent and she did say that I could take out a loan. I have to qualify for the loan. The one interesting thing to know, though, and it's important, is if you buy property here and you take out a loan, you have to have it paid back by the time you're 70 years old. So that's a big deal because you're going to have to pay a higher mortgage in order to pay it back sooner. So that's different than it is in the US. And I think that's the same for the Portuguese as well. So Portugal, in comparison with other European countries, it's the most affordable country in Western Europe, not in Eastern Europe. And Spain is a good second. Spain is quite affordable. The housing is more affordable in Spain, but you have some other issues like ocupados, which is people that come in and squat, and if they stay more than 24 hours, you can't get them out legally. You cannot. So I would be a little hesitant to buy in Spain, but to rent in Spain would be great. Portugal, the housing prices are increasing, as mentioned, and therefore it's a little bit pricier for that, but the food is less expensive. Or in Spain, the food is more expensive. And it all depends on where you are. If you're out in the country, if you're in a little town, if you're in a village, if you're in a big city, of course, things are going to be more expensive in a big city. Now, if you compare Portugal to Eastern Europe, which is amazing, there are so many amazing places to live in Eastern Europe too, and Eastern Europe is less. So in Eastern Europe, some of the places that are more affordable are Albania, which is gorgeous right on the Mediterranean, and you have Bulgaria, which is also affordable. I know somebody who lives in Bosnia-Herzegovina. They love it, super affordable. And Greece, of course. And there's many others, Romania, there's a lot of other places that you could check out in Eastern Europe, but most of them are going to be less expensive. The weather in Portugal, that is something I talk about a lot, and that is a whole can of worms. So I think the easiest way to understand it, and this is how I explain it, and it's not exactly, it's not precise, is that if you look at California and if you know the weather in California, San Diego is similar to the Algarve here in Portugal. Los Angeles is similar weather to Lisbon, and San Francisco has similar weather to Porto. Now, it is almost the same latitude between San Francisco and Porto. But here there is humidity. And the humidity makes it seem a lot colder in the winter and a lot hotter in the summer. However, the hottest days that we get here in Porto in the summer, maybe a week of 100 degrees. Not even 100, probably 90. It's not even 100. Maybe one day of 100. But it's rare. It's been just lovely. All summer we had 1 week that was a heat wave, and the rest of the summer was perfect and beautiful so far. The winter, however, and I wish I could remember what it is in Fahrenheit, because I don't, but it can get down to 0, and that's also in Fahrenheit, so that'll make sense. And then it gets really cold. I would guess 20s, low 20s. Some days, especially in the morning, it'll warm up as the day goes on, and it'll be about a month of pretty cold weather, 1 to 2 months actually in Porto and above Porto. But the thing that's really hard is the rain. So the first year that I lived here, it rained about 4 months out of the year. Totally doable. The second year that I lived here, it rained 10 months. And I wish I was exaggerating, but I am not. And so that is gray skies and rain for 10 months. There were about 5 to 7 sunny days in between those 10 months. A sunny day here, sunny day there. But most of the time, no. And it was hard. And I had to get a sad lamp, and it was a sad light. And it's rough. It's rough. This past year, my third year, it's rained about 6 to 7 months out of the year. Again, it's a little challenging, but I have a solution, which is just go south or go to southern Spain for 2 months in the winter, and everything's fine. That's my solution. I haven't done it, but that's my solution. And in the Algarve, it gets really, really, really hot in the summer. Really hot. So above 100 for sure. So again, maybe in the summer, you go to the north for a month or something, or you go back to visit your family or whatever. So there's ways to mitigate it, but it is not perfect. The weather is not perfect. Now, on the other hand, there is an island south of here that is still Portugal called Madeira, and that has perfect weather all year round. So I've heard. I've never been, but this is what people tell me. And you could settle there. As for community, there is a very active expat community in Portugal and in different areas of Portugal. So there's even in different areas of the Algarve, there will be expat communities. There's one in huge expat community in Porto. There's, of course, in Lisbon, in Braga, they have a meetup. I think it's once a month or something like that. And all around, except in a little tiny village, you're not going to find that. But even in the district of Aveiro, they have a whole expat community. I'm not on their WhatsApp group, and they talk all the time. They get together for holidays, and it's really lovely. It's really, really nice. I am part of, I don't want to say I'm part of the expat community, because I'm not really part of the expat community. I just know expats. but I met them at expat meetup groups. And there are all different kinds of expat meetup groups. There's so many different ones. And I met quite a few close friends, but where I met my closest friends are from the vegan group. And I found them on Facebook. I'm no longer on Facebook, but when I was, and there's a vegan group in the Algarve as well. I'm not sure about Lisbon, but for sure here, obviously in Porto. And I made really good friends from the vegan group, and not everyone is vegan. You don't have to be vegan to join the vegan group. You just have to be curious or willing to eat when we have a little meetup. But the people are amazing, and there are many Portuguese that go to that group as well. And so I made a lot of Portuguese friends from the group, and I have a mix of Portuguese and expat friends because of several different reasons. I'm pretty gregarious, and I do make friends pretty easily. And if I go to a workout, like I did a workout, like let's say you go to yoga, or I did a martial arts for a while, then I met somebody there, a Portuguese woman there. I meet people when I'm dog walking, mostly Portuguese, and so I have friends from my dog walking, and we'll hang out. I made friends with my neighbors, and we hang out, and they're Portuguese. So actually, the ones that I'm closest to are Brazilian, but it's a really lovely community here. I have more of a community here in Portugal than I ever had in the United States and in California where I was born and raised. I have a stronger, deeper, more meaningful community here in Portugal. And community is one of my favorite things about living here. So it's not a problem at all. It's great. It's just great. I have a car, but you don't need one. Public transportation is enough depending on where you want to go. If you want to go to some of the cute little villages or little towns out where public transportation doesn't reach, no, but you can rent a car. I have a friend who rents a car maybe once or twice a month, and she'll make some big box store runs, or she'll go on little day trips to places that she can't reach by the train or the bus. However, I chose to buy a car for several reasons. And one was that I had some bad experiences I had a very bad experience on the train. I ended up getting COVID, the only time I've ever had it, or so far. And I had some bad experiences on the buses, but they were all due to me bringing my dog. So dogs are allowed on both the train and the bus, but they must be in a crate. However, I ran into some bus drivers that wouldn't let me get on with my dog, even though I had paid for him. And it was a bit of an ordeal. I had to wait one time because the first bus was late. The first bus didn't show up. The second bus was late or overcrowded. And I ended up waiting at the bus station to take a bus. This is pretty funny, to Braga, which is 1 hour away. And I could have taken an Uber for 30 euros. And I waited 6 hours to take the bus for 1 hour because of all of these problems that happened at the bus station. And that was about the third or fourth time I had run into some issues. However, apparently it's just me, because all my friends say that the bus system and the train system works great for them and they've never had a problem. So I do want to say that. It's for whatever reason, they just didn't work for me, but they work for other people. However, that did make me buy a car. And I wanted a car because of the dog, primarily, because I don't want to have to worry about getting, especially the dog that I have now is not the same dog that I brought over from the United States. And the dog that I have now is a Portuguese rescue dog. And while she is crate trained, she's heavy. And she's 9 kilos, so I don't want to have to carry it's over 20 pounds. I don't want to have to, I can't even lift that. I can, of course I can, but I don't want to be carrying that through a busy terminal to try to catch a bus. And the buses are where the bus drops you off for the bus terminal. The bus to catch to go somewhere else is really far away. You have to walk pretty far. So that sort of thing where I don't need to have to worry about carrying my dog with me. And I do travel within Portugal quite a bit. And I just like the freedom of having a car, but I do use it to take her to daycare. But if other than that, I wouldn't use it. I have driven in the city, of course, but I don't really drive in the city. I can walk most places, and I don't really like looking for parking and that sort of thing. I do have free parking in front of my house, but if you are interested in buying a car or think that's something you might do in the future, look for an apartment that has parking, because some of them do. Some of them will come with parking. So that is one thing. Also, there are tolls. So all the freeways are not freeways, they're all tollways, and so you do have to pay a toll. You get a little pass called Via Verde, and it just takes it off the little pass, electronic pass that's in your car, and then it just comes out of your bank account when they need to re-up the money. And then you can also park with that everywhere. It's great. So if you get a car, make sure you get that. It's great, and it's not difficult to get it. So yeah, I highly recommend that. The gas is not cheap. I got a very small smart car, smart for 4, and the gas is more expensive, but my mileage is much better. So there's that. But like I said, for me, it was a must. I have to have a car for the dog and for I need that sense of freedom. So it's up to you. I have many friends in Porto that refuse to buy a car. 2 of them are from New York. They said, we'll never buy a car. It's one of the reasons we moved here, and they're perfectly happy. Portugal is a great base for remote work and for digital nomads. I myself do remote work here. I love it. It's fine. They have great Wi-Fi. My apartment has great Wi-Fi. I had a comment recently from somebody, I think on my Substack, that said, well, I'm worried about moving abroad because of the Wi-Fi. The Wi-Fi is great. It's so funny. I'm not saying it's great everywhere in the world or even everywhere in Portugal, but my Wi-Fi is great. I have had no problems. Sometimes they turn it off. That could be a problem. So I do have a backup. I have a hotspot. And I also pay extra to have my phone as a hotspot and unlimited Wi-Fi on my phone. Less money than I ever paid in the US. I think it's $25 a month. And so I can use that if something happens. But one time my internet stopped and I can't call because it's in Portuguese. I couldn't get anybody in English. So I went in to the office, and I had to go in early, and I had to wait in line, and they said, oh, sorry, it was our mistake. We'll have it back up tomorrow. So there are issues like that now and again, but I also had issues like that in the US and had to call the company in the US that I was using. So I don't feel that it's any worse here than it was in the United States. I have enough Wi-Fi to play on my PlayStation and watch TV and be on the internet and watch movies and all of it. So yeah, and I have a smart TV, so it's all hooked up to Wi-Fi. No problems at all. And I've had other people, friends over, staying with me that have been working at the same time I was working, and there's never been an issue. So yeah, I think it's really, really a great place for digital nomads. I will say that when I first moved here, it was uncommon to see people in coffee shops working on their computers, but it is more common now. And I did it, but it felt a little out of place, a little funny. And now I see it more and more frequently. It's still not super common, but there are also a ton of remote work spaces here that are super affordable and really great. I belonged to one when I first got here, and they were doing major construction on the apartment next door, and I couldn't work in my apartment. It was too loud. And so I joined a group. I could bring my dog, and they were lovely, lovely people. And yeah, it was a mom and pop place, so I really, really liked it. And it's walking distance from me. And I always have fantasies about going back there, but I have a great office space now, so I haven't. But I've kept in touch with them, and they're just lovely, wonderful people, and they have a lot of options, like a sound studio and some other things that they're building, and an outdoor space for your dog. And so there are a lot of facilities and places that you can go to if you want, if that's something that you like to do. And of course, more in Lisbon and less in a town, maybe none in a village. I think the most common challenges that expats face in Portugal is learning to be adaptable and roll with the punches, and learning that you're not home. It will become your home, but it's not like your home. They don't have modern conveniences here. There are no drive-thrus that I've seen. I like to talk about that a lot because, for example, my cousin was the drive-thru queen, and she will tell you that. She was a modern convenience woman. She loved her drive-thrus. She did drive-thru Starbucks. She'd order ahead, on her app, and then pick it up, and everything had to be convenient. She was really into Costco. She went there all the time, and she moved to Paris. And she decided that it was more important for her to live in Paris without her conveniences than to stay in Portland with her conveniences. And I like to bring that up because that's the choice you're going to have to make. You're going to have to decide what you can and can't live without. And if you can't live without certain things, you might not be able to find those things here. And it might be a deal breaker for you. I hope it's not, because I found that the things when I first got here that were glaring and weird to me and different, and I would, I can't believe it's like that. I don't even think about those things now. I don't even remember what they are. So it's adaptability, but I think that those are big challenges because we're used to something. And especially, I'd never lived outside of the US before moving here. And besides living in a van for a year, I'd never lived outside of California. So for me, and maybe for you, it was a big difference. When I travel, it's all novel and exciting and fun and new and not forever. So it's not the same. It's completely different. One of my biggest challenges was finding a grocery store. And somebody just made fun of me on YouTube for this because they're a traveler and they find it easy to find grocery stores, but I didn't. And when I got here, I had 2 large suitcases. I had my old semi-sick dog, and I had moved to a new country. I didn't know the language, and I was by myself. I didn't have anybody that could watch the dog while I went into a grocery store. It was just me, and I didn't have a place to live for 4 months. So I had some challenges, and one of my biggest challenges was finding a grocery store. So I'm just mentioning that because if that happens to you, you're not alone, and there's nothing wrong with you, and there's a learning curve. So that's going to be a big challenge. This is a learning curve. Language is going to be a challenge, but it's fun. It's fun to learn a new language. It's just, I love it. Like the adventure that going out to the post office is an adventure. Everything is an adventure, and I love that. I love having adventures. I love feeling like this is a puzzle to be solved, and there's just so much fun to be had in even just the everyday things that you're doing. And it also took me a while to do things or find things that I used to do and love in the US, and that was a challenge for me, was to find hiking, and now I have. So there's a solution to most problems. There are other challenges like inside my apartment where my toilet does not flush properly and I can't flush toilet paper down the toilet, so I have to put it in a waste basket. This, for me, was not a problem because I used to live in a van and could not do that in the van either, didn't really have a toilet in the van, and also used to live on a houseboat in the houseboat community in Sausalito where I couldn't flush the paper. So for me, it wasn't a huge challenge, but there are challenges like that. Also, no air conditioning and no heat. In my apartment, some of the apartments have that. The newer ones do. Mine does not. That was a huge challenge. The winters were a big, big, big challenge for me. My first winter wasn't because I was so excited to be here. So my second winter was the worst so far. But you get used to it, you figure ways around it, you find solutions, and it's all doable, it's all workable. It's, again, the best thing that I've ever done in my life is moving to Portugal. I have zero regrets, zero. I am so happy to be here. I do sometimes fantasize about moving to Spain, but I love Portugal. I love it. I love it here so much. And what you should know before you move here is that exactly all that I just said, it's not going to be what you expect. It's not going to be easy. I will never say it's easy, but I will always say it's worth it. And you'll grow. You'll grow in ways you never knew that you needed to grow. And you will become, I should speak for myself, I became even more adaptable and I became more laid back, more easygoing. Things don't bother me as much here. People here love to queue. I will say that. They love to wait in line. So they will just wait in line and they will not complain. And that is just a breath of fresh air. I love that. So you just wait in line along with them. And you don't complain because no one else is complaining and there's no one to complain to. And even on the road in traffic, they will wait in line and just wait and just wait. It's really interesting. So yeah, there's a lot of differences. There's so much more I could say, but I don't think I have time because I've talked way too long and I love it. I just love it, love it, love it, love it. Wouldn't change it for the world.